All right, hello everyone. So I hope you guys are doing good. And today we'll be discussing about dynamic programming yet again. We will be solving 3 problems based on DP. They they all will be intermediate level problems. One of them will be 1600 and the other two are going to be 1800 level problems. And again, rather than just ranting out the solution, I would discuss the thought process behind actually getting to the solution so that it will help you solve problems during a live contest. And again, we will be following these 3 basic steps while solving any DP problem. The first step is that we can convince ourselves that DP is the way to go. And again, the second most important step is to actually figure out the state of the DP. And lastly, you figure out the base cases and the transitions. These are the 4 basic thumb rules to solving any DP problem. And again, we will be following them. So yeah, without any further ado, I think we should start with our first problem. I have already shared the links to all the problems in the chat box, so you can refer to them. And right, let's start with the first problem for the day. This is from Codeforces round 714, problem C. Yeah, this is a 1600 level problem, not that difficult to start with, so it might be fun. So let's see what this problem is saying. So we are given with an integer n and we have to apply m operations to it. And in a single operation, we have to replace every digit of the current state of n with, for example, if the digit is d, we have to replace it with d plus 1. So it will become more clear with this example. So if currently we have n is equals to 1912, after one operation, the 1 is replaced by 2, the 9 is replaced by 10, the 1 is replaced by 2, and the 2 is replaced by 3. So yeah, this is what an operation does to a number. And initially we have been given an n and we have to apply m operations to it. And finally, we have to tell what will be the length of the resulting number after applying all the m operations, right? So yeah, that's the entire problem that we have. And yeah, this is it. So if you guys have any doubts in understanding the problem, you can ask, or else I will give you 2 to 3 minutes to think about it. If you guys think about any possible approaches, you are free to share and it will be much appreciated.
Okay, so the transitions will occur only, the number of digits will only increase when we are at 9. So we'll calculate the number of 9s that can occur at various different stages in the digit.
Okay.
And then how much will it contribute? We can do something like that.
Yeah, that is on the right track. You are on the right track. Make 10 variables for each of the digit and increase them accordingly. Yeah, that is something we are going to do. Okay, so I think I should start with
But will not it give a TLE, because while counting 9, I mean, the counting of 9 will will be the tricky, right?
Yeah, if we do it via brute force, obviously we are going to get TLE. That is why we have to do it smartly. So yeah, without any further ado, let's start with the solution only. Okay. So let's start with the first observation here. And the first observation is that we can solve for each digit separately. Yeah, we will do some kind of pre-computation here. That is correct, Anurag. Okay, so the first observation here is that in the number n, there will be various digits. And what we can do is we can solve for each of the digits separately. For example, here, if you see the number n in the input is 1912. So what we can do is we can solve for 1 separately, 9 separately, 1 separately, and 2 separately, and then finally add them, because we can just do that. There is no reason we can't do that, right? So we are going to solve for each digit separately and finally just add the answer to our result for each digit. Okay, so now the question reduces to, before that, let me write this observation. We can solve for each digit of n separately and add the results. Right? Okay, so if anybody has any doubts in understanding why this is something we can do, then you are free to ask. Otherwise, now the problem has been greatly reduced. We are given a collection of digits. And we have to apply m operations on each of the digit and add the final lengths of all the digits. But what we realize here is that the digits can only be from 0 to 9. So a very good thing that we can do here is that we can pre-compute the answer for any number of operations and for any digit beforehand. So what we can do is we can pre-compute the length of the number starting from a digit d and after some k operations for every d from 0 to 9. And all this we can do before even reading our inputs. And once we are done with that, we can just see that whatever integers and whatever digits are there in our input n, we can just look at the pre-computed value of that integer after m operations and then just add them for all the digits that occur in n, right? So yeah, that is something which we are going to do. And it seems pretty reasonable to do that using dynamic programming. So we are done with step 1. We have reduced the problem to a dynamic programming problem. Now the challenge here is to actually figure out the state of the DP, which again here is not very difficult. So will anybody like to have a guess what the state of the DP is going to be? It's pretty much written here in this line.
DP of I is equal to DP of plus DP of I minus 1. And in the case of for 9, we'll specifically handle for 1 and 0.
Okay, so first of all, let's figure out the state of the DP. We'll look into the transitions later on. Yeah, that is true. So
the state would be the digit and number of operations left.
Yeah, great. So let's define a DP of ij. Let's make it d to denote the digit and k to denote the number of operations. So it will be DP of d comma k is equal to the length of the resulting number starting from digit d and after k operations, right? So this is what my DP is representing. And I will just assume that I finally have calculated all the DP values. Then the answer will just be summation of DP d comma m for all digits of n. M is something which is given to us in the problem, and we can find out all the digits of n very easily and just add the DP dm values. So we know what the final answer is going to be. We know the state of the DP. The only challenge left for us is to figure out the transitions now. So yeah, with this state of the DP, now can anyone tell me what kind of transitions are we going to have? It's not very difficult to see here what's going on. Okay, so one thing to notice is that the length of the digit is not increasing if my digit is from 0 to 8, because if I have d after one operation, it will be replaced by d plus 1. And for 0 to 8, the length of their original length is 1, and after one operation, again, their length will be just 1, right? Because they are from 0 to 8, I will increase them by 1 and they will still remain single digit. Right, right. So the transitions can be seen pretty easily. If D is not 9, so if D is less than 9, then I can just do an operation and the length will not increase. So dp of D comma K is nothing but dp of D plus 1 K minus 1, right? Because I will do an operation on D, it will become D plus 1. And now I am required to do K minus 1 more operations, because in total I wanted K operations. But what if D is K? What if D is equals to 9? Yeah, so now will anybody like to share what the transitions would be for D is equals to 9? Because this is the only case when the length is increasing.
dp1 K minus 1.
Yeah, dp1 K minus 1 will be one part.
Plus dp0 K minus 1.
Great, great. So the transitions will go something like this. I think it's pretty intuitive to understand here, because a 9 is getting broken into 1 and 0, that is 10. And I have done one operation, so I have K minus 1 operations remaining, and I have a 1 and a 0. So dp9K is nothing but dp1K minus 1 plus dp0K minus 1. So using these transitions, I can successfully calculate all the dp values and get done, right? The final answer can be calculated by summing up the values of dp of D comma M for all the values M provided to me in the problem. M will be provided to me in the problem, and for all the digits of N, which I can very easily find out. Right, so this completes the explanation for this problem. It was not a very difficult one. If you have any doubts, you are again free to ask. If there are no doubts, I will go ahead and try to implement this. All right, it seems like there are no doubts here, so let's try to implement this problem. All right. Let's see what they have been provided in the input. Okay, so we have N, M, and only that. Right, so in the input, we have been provided with N and M, but even before processing the input, what we can do is we can do some pre-computations here. Right, and that is what we are going to do. So let's define a DP array. So my state of the DP was DP of D comma K, and they have provided us that M will always be less than 2 into 10 to the 5, and the digits can only be from 0 to 9. So it is sufficient to initialize the DP something like this. Right. So also initially the length of all the digits is 1. So it's better if I initialize my values with 1. Right. Now I iterate on the number of operations from 1 to 2 into 10 to the power 5. And then I will iterate on which digit am I talking about. And then I can do simply something like this. So if I is less than 9, again, it's pretty simple. dp of ij is equals to dp I plus 1 j minus 1. Otherwise, dp ij is equals to the addition of dp of 1 k minus 1 and dp of 0 k minus 1. Since we have to output everything modulo 10 raised to the power 9 plus 7, I am doing modular addition. Right, so this is pretty much enough for the pre-computation. Yeah, so Atithi, I have initialized the DP values with 1 because initially the length of every digit is 1, right? If I have not done any operation, then 0 remains 0, 1 remains 1, and so on. So the length is just 1. That is why I've initialized the DP values with 1. Right, so now we are done with the pre-computations. So it's just very easy now. We can just look at all the digits of n and add the value. So we can very easily iterate on the digits of n. The last digit of n will always be n modulo 10. So we can do something like this. Digit is equals to n modulo 10. And we can then divide n by 10 so that we successfully get the next digit.
Yeah,
And then
are you writing it wrong? Like, wouldn't be I minus 1? Like dp of ij is equal to dp of I minus 1, j minus 1? No, above.
Yeah. So actually what is happening here is currently I have a digit I and I have j operations. So if I do one operation, I will be converted to I plus 1. And the number of operations which remain are j minus 1. That is why dp of ij is equals to dp of I plus 1, j minus 1. What
So
you
our
are trying.
final answer would be when j is 0.
No, our final answer will be when j is equals to m. So let me just write what dp of ij is representing. dp of ij is the length of the number starting with digit I after j operations. So if I have a digit I and initially its length is something, and after I do one operation, if that digit is less than 9, then it will remain the same, right? So that is why I have done one operation and my length is remaining same and the digit has increased by 1. So dp of ij is dp of I plus 1, j minus 1. And if the digit is 9, then it will break down into a 1 and a 0. So dp of ij is modular addition of dp of 1j minus 1 and dp of 0j minus 1. Does that make sense to you? I guess
I
it
mean,
was, yeah.
I'm still a bit confused in like, so in this case, the value of 9, let's say value of 7, dp of 7 after 3 operations would be calculated by 8 after 2 operations.
Yeah. That is true, right? Because when I have 7 and I have to apply 3 operations to it, I can just apply one operation, it will become 8. And now I have 2 more operations to apply.
Yeah, so like j is representing number of operations left or number of operations done.
So j is representing the number of operations left.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So then I have my digit with me and I will just add to my answer dp of digit and m to my answer. And this will most probably do my job. Let's see if this is working. Five, 2, 6, 4. Right, it seems to be working fine. Let's just submit it to be sure. All right, so this seems to be fine. So yeah, this was the first problem. If you guys still have any doubts, you can still ask. So Survankar, are you clear about the transitions? Okay, so the J loop is running for 2e5 times because in the problem they have provided us that m can be up to 2e5 and m is the number of operations. That is why the J loop is running 2e5 times. Yeah, any other doubts?
Can you please repeat why d plus 1 is happening?
Yeah, so m is in the input, but before even taking the input, I am pre-computing the answer for all values of m. So the pre-computation is independent of the input. What I'm doing is I'm computing the answer for all the values of m. And in the problem, when they provide me a value of m, I am just using my pre-computed value. Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, I guess this is it for the first problem. I hope you were able to understand this. Right. So now if you guys don't have any more doubts. Yeah. Okay, so I will just discuss the transitions one more time. Again, what is happening is dp of ij is denoting the length of the number if I start from the digit I and I have j operations remaining, right? So if I am at a digit I and I have j operations remaining, then I can do an operation on it and then I will have j minus 1 operations remaining. But if the digit is less than 9, then its length remains same and the digit becomes I plus 1 from I. So dp of ij is equals to dp of I plus 1 j minus 1, because after applying an operation, the digit becomes I plus 1 and the number of remaining operations now become j minus 1. But if the digit is 9, it is breaking down into a 1 and a 0, and I still have j minus 1 operations remaining. So in case of 9, dp of ij will be the summation of dp1 j minus 1 and dp0 j minus 1. So yeah, I hope you are clear now about what is happening here. All right, so if you are clear about what's going on, I think we can move on to the next problem. Yeah, so this is not throwing any TLE because the time complexity is just 10 into 2 into 10 raised power 5, which is 2 into 10 raised power 6, which is good enough, right? That is why it's not throwing any TLEs. All right, so someone who has drawn this line, I would request you to kindly erase this. Yeah, so let's move on to the next problem. This is called the Sports Festival. It is from Codeforces round 715. Again, this is an 1800 problem, and this is a very special problem because it will introduce you to a new topic, a new kind of DP, which is known as range DP. And we'll talk more about it once we get into this problem. So let's see what this has to say. So basically we have n people and every person has a particular speed. So I have been given with an array S, where S of I is the speed of the ith person, right? That's what I have. And the discrepancy di of the ith stage is the difference between the maximum and the minimum running speeds in the prefix of length I. Okay, so we have a discrepancy value for each index where d of I is the maximum minus minimum in the prefix of I. And what we are allowed to do is we are allowed to permute the array any way we want. So that is completely our choice. We can permute it any way we want. And finally, we want to minimize the sum of discrepancies. So we want to minimize d1 plus d2 up till dn. And let me just reiterate what these d values are. So if we after permutation, we get an array A, which is a permutation of S, then d of 1 will be just a of 1 minus a of 1, because the minimum and maximum both are a of 1. But d of 2 will be the maximum among a1 and a2 minus the minimum among a1 and a2. Similarly, d of I will be the maximum among a1 up till ai minus the minimum among a1 up till ai. And what we want to do is we want to minimize the sum of these discrepancies, and we have to output what is the minimum value of the sum of discrepancies, that is d1 plus d2 up till dn. Right, that is what we want. And again, notice here that the constraints are up till 2000, so that might be something special. I will now give 2 to 3 minutes to you guys to think about it. This is a tough one, I would admit, but even then, if you guys have any approaches, you are free to share.
I have a greedy approach that we can, reverse sort the SI values. That will help or not?
Well, there is a greedy approach here, but that is just an observation that we will have to do. But obviously a greedy solution is not going to work here. Okay, so Atithi is saying dp of ik denotes if the ith person is on the kth position. Right, so this is something that the problem setters wanted us to think about. And that is why this problem became very difficult during the contest, because a lot of people were thinking about this approach, but it turns out that this is not what we have to do here. So any other approaches? I'll give you another.
What is the difference between SI and AI here?
Yeah, so SI is in the order in which they have given us the values, but we are allowed to permute the values on our own wish. So after the permutation, I am saying that we have a value AI. That is all that I'm trying to say here. I will give you another 2 minutes to think about it. All right, so if there are no more approaches coming, let's just start with the solution. And trust me, this is going to be a very interesting problem, and it will introduce you to a new kind of DP, which is also known as range DP. So let's start. Okay, so let's start by making a greedy observation. So an important observation here is that obviously we are allowed to make a permutation as and when we want, right? So let's say at the ith position, we take the minimum element. So there will be a minimum element among all the n values, right? So let's say at the ith position, we take the minimum element. So right. So if I take the minimum element at the ith position, then one thing is guaranteed, that for all the indexes from I to n, the minimum element is going to be A of I, which is the minimum element of the entire array. So let's say this minimum element is Mn. So if it is at the ith position, then in calculating the D value, that is the discrepancy value for all the indexes from I to n, the minimum element that we take is going to be Mn. That's for sure. So then for Bi to n, minimum element is equals to Mn. Similarly, if we put the maximum element at a position j, so maximum element, let's call it mx at j, then what happens is, then for d of j to n, everywhere the maximum element is going to be mx, because simply it is the maximum element of the array, and I know that I cannot have any element greater than it. So maximum element is going to be mx, and the discrepancy is equals to max element minus min element. And what we want is to minimize this discrepancy. So if we want to minimize the discrepancy, what we want is we want to minimize the maximum element and we want to maximize the minimum element. Naturally, that will minimize our discrepancy. But what happens is that once we encounter Mn, then the minimum element gets replaced by Mn, which is small. And that is something we don't want. We want a large minimum element and we want a small maximum element. Similarly, after J, the maximum element gets fixed to Mx, which is something that we don't want because that is increasing our discrepancy, right? So to minimize the discrepancy, the maximum element should be as small as possible and the minimum element should be as large as possible. That will minimize my discrepancy. Okay, so that is one observation here. So the greedy observation to make is so it is always better to put Mx and Mn in the last, second last, or vice versa positions. Right? So that is because once we put Mn or once we put Mx, we are basically fixing the maximum and minimum elements to the maximum or the minimum value possible, which is something that we don't want because that is increasing our discrepancy. And so the greedy observation to make here is that it is always better to put the maximum and the minimum elements in the last and second last positions. We can, that is our wish. Either we want to put the minimum element first or the maximum element first. That is our wish. But yeah, that is something we have to do here. Right. So does anybody have any doubts in understanding why it is always beneficial to put the maximum and minimum elements towards the end?
Can you give an example?
Yeah. So let's try to look at an example. Let's say I have something like this, 5, 3, 1, 2, or maybe 5, 1, 3, 2. So this is my speed array. Now I want to convert it into a permutation, right? So let's say one permutation is this 5, 1, 3, 2 itself. And the other permutation that I'm going to take is like this 2, 3, 1, 5. So now let's try to calculate the discrepancy value for the first permutation. So D1 is going to be 0 because max and min both are 5. But now we see that for all values from 2 to 4, we know that we have taken the maximum element. So the maximum element gets fixed to be 5. So the maximum element always remains 5. Now here the minimum element is 1. So the discrepancy will be 4. Now again, now we have taken both the maximum and minimum element and there is no use to even look at the other elements because the maximum element will never exceed 5 and the minimum element will never be below 1. So the discrepancy values will just be 4 and 4. And this is a large value. This is something that I don't want. I want my discrepancies to be as minimum as possible. But here what I'm doing is, again, D of 1 will be 0. But now D of 2 will be 1. Now here we see that the maximum element is 3 and the minimum element is 1. So D of 3 will be 2. And here I can't help it. The maximum element is 4 and the minimum element is 1. So the D value will be 4. So you can easily notice that we are getting a discrepancy of 12 here and a discrepancy of 7 here, which is good for us. So that is why it is always beneficial to put the maximum and the minimum element in the last two positions, but their order is something that is up to us and that we can decide in such a way that will minimize our discrepancy. All right. So is it clear why we are putting the maximum and minimum elements towards the end? I hope it is. All right. So yeah, this is the main observation here. And now, again, this is just an observation. This is not helping us to solve the problem like using a greedy method. This is a greedy observation, but we can't just apply this operation to solve the problem because there is no way we can decide about the ordering of all the other elements, right? We just know that we are putting the last and the second last element towards the end. Okay, so yeah. So we know that there is a greedy approach, but that is not helping us to entirely solve the problem. That is just beneficial for us to think about something else. And the next clue is that the value of n here is just up to 2000. And that is a very strong hint towards DP. And also we can't do a greedy approach here because yeah, we are out of ideas now. And that is when we start to think about DP. And this value of constraints of up to 2000 is helping us in that direction. So yeah, we are sure that DP can be a way to go in this problem. But the interesting part here is the state of the DP. Yeah, so will anybody like to share about what they're thinking the state of the DP can be here? Any ideas? I have already given a hint that this kind of DP is called range DP.
In every small range, the maximum as well as minimum element would be at the corner position.
Yeah, that is true.
Like even in every, like when we form our DP states,
Yeah.
then also we have to take care of this, that of the remaining elements, like whatever elements we have in hand at the moment.
Yeah.
So we'll put those elements to one end of the array.
Yeah, that is true. That is brilliant. That is something which is going to be very useful. Obviously, if you are interested in the maximum and minimum elements, the first thing to do here is to sort the array, because we can order it in any way that we want. So why not just sort it initially? That way, for any range, we will easily be able to figure out the maximum and minimum element because we have already sorted the array. Okay, so from here on, I will assume that the array is sorted. And now let's talk about DP. So this is called range DP. And the basic definition here is that we do DP on ranges. Simple. A range is defined by a starting point and an ending point, right? And that is I and j. So DP of ij denotes the minimum value of, what was this word here? Discrepancy. So the minimum value of discrepancy, if we only consider the range from I to j, right? So we are right now only considering elements which are in the range from I to j. And obviously we have already sorted the array because that is something which we are allowed to do because the order is not mattering here. So we have been given an speed array and we can convert it into any permutation that we want. So why not just sort it to begin with? So in the sorted array, I'm looking only at the range from I to j, and I'm saying that DP of ij is the minimum value of the discrepancy if we only consider the range from I to j, right? So I hope this definition of DP is clear. Now, can anyone tell me what the final answer will be once I have calculated all the DP values?
DP of
1 to n. 1 to n.
Great. So the range which I'm interested in is the entire array, which is the range from 1 to n. So the final answer is just going to be DP of 1n. Okay, great. Now this is the very interesting part of the problem, and it is seemingly easy once you actually learn about it. So the transitions. Okay, so I have a range from I to j. Now, how do I make transitions? Any ideas here? I know that the minimum element is just the ith element and the maximum element is the jth element because I have sorted the array in increasing order. So the minimum element will be a of I and the maximum element will be a of j. Another hint is that in a range I to j, I still have to maintain this property that I am adding the first n minus 2 elements where n is the length of the range. I'm adding the first n minus 2 elements before, and at the end is when I am adding the minimum and the maximum elements. And that is up to me. I can add the minimum element at the second last position or at the last position. That is up to me. Yeah, you are right. That is what the transitions are going to somewhat look like. So let's see what happens. So we have two choices. Either we can add the maximum element in the end or we can add the minimum element in the end. So if we add the maximum element in the end, it is implied that we are adding the minimum element in the second last position. Right? So these are the two choices that we have. So the case one is when we add the maximum element at the end. We know that the maximum element is going to be a of j. So I already have computed the value of dp I j minus 1. That is, I am adding all the elements from I to j minus 1, and towards the end I am adding the element j. So in that case, dp of ij can be dp of I minus 1j, ij minus 1, I'm sorry. That is because I have added all the elements, and now I will add the maximum element. Now, once I add the maximum element, it will introduce a discrepancy value, which will be d of j. So can anyone tell me what d of j will be? It is the maximum element in the range from I to j minus the minimum element in the range from I to j. And I have a sorted array. It's fairly simple to notice what the value is going to be.
dp of j minus dp of
j minus a of 1.
Yes.
A of I.
Yeah, so we are considering the range from I to j, and the array is sorted. So obviously the maximum element is going to be a of j, and the minimum element is going to be a of I. So the new discrepancy value that adding the maximum element will introduce is a of j minus a of I. So that is one thing. But the second case is that we are adding all the elements but the minimum element, and we are adding the minimum element towards the end. So yeah, now it is fairly simple, and it is like very similar to what I have done above. So can anyone tell me what the new dp value will be here if I am adding the minimum element at the end? dp of something something plus something. Again, it's really simple. I am adding all the elements but the minimum element, and the minimum element is the ith
dp of
element.
I minus 1 j plus dp of aj minus ai.
Right. So my name has given the correct answer. So it will be dp of I plus 1j, because I have not added a of I and I have added a of j. So it will be dp of I plus 1j. Plus again, the new discrepancy value is just going to be a of j minus a of I. Right. So these are the transitions here. So the actual transition that I can say here is that, let's say this value is x1 and this value is x2, then dp of ij will just be minimum of x1 comma x2, because at the end of the day I want to minimize the discrepancy, right? So yeah, this is what the entire transition states are looking like. And again, this is a new topic, but even then it is very similar to what we do in a normal DP problem. But again, it is really interesting to notice here. So yeah, any doubts are welcomed. And if there are no doubts, I will go on and try to implement this now.
Can you please repeat the transitions?
Yeah. So currently I am at a range starting from I and ending at j. And I know that I have already sorted my array. So the minimum element will always be at the ith position and the maximum element will always be at the jth position. Great. Now, as I've already described above, initially I am adding all the n minus 2 values where n is equals to j minus I plus 1. That is the length of the range. So initially I am adding all the n minus 2 values from I plus 1 to j minus 1. And that is because of this greedy observation that we will always add the minimum and the maximum values towards the end, because that will help us to minimize the discrepancy. That is the greedy observation that we made previously. So yeah, we have added all the elements from I plus 1 to j minus 1 already. And now there are two choices: either add I before j or add j before I. Right. So one choice is that we are adding I before j. So that means we already have dp of I and j minus 1 calculated, and we are just adding the last element, which will introduce a discrepancy value of aj minus ai, because the maximum element is a of j and the minimum element is a of I. So dp of ij can then be dp of ij minus 1 plus a of j minus a of I. Yeah, so let me just complete the second case again. So the second case says that I have already added the maximum element, and now I need to add the minimum element. So the maximum element is at the jth position and the minimum element is at the ith position. So that means I have added all the elements from I plus 1 to j. So dp of ij will just be dp of I plus 1j, and the new discrepancy value, which will again be a of j minus a of I, since the maximum element will be a of j and the minimum element will be a of I. Right? Okay. So my name is asking that I have started the recursive DPs and I want to transition into iterative DP, but I cannot figure out the ordering of the I and j loops. And this is a very interesting problem which will help us to figure out the ordering of the loops. So don't worry, we will try to see what the ordering should be here. And that this problem will surely help you in trying to figure that out. Okay, so if there are no more doubts, let's go ahead and try to implement this problem. This is sports festival. All right. Okay, so let's see. In the input, we have n, and then we just have n and all the values. There are no test cases also. That's good. Okay, so we take in the input and now it's simple DP. All we have to do is to apply DP. The code is going to be very concise. The first step, as always, is to sort the array because we are allowed to do that. So why not just do it? Now we create a DP table. And since we are iterating on ranges, I can go from 1 to n and j can go from 1 to n. So we have to create an n cross n DP array. Just to be safe, I am keeping it from n plus 5. All right. Now we have to iterate on I and j. So can anyone tell me what the order of iteration should be? I is the starting of my interval and j is the ending of my interval. And before that, I will just write the transitions, which will help you in figure out the order of looping. So dpij is equals to minimum of dp I plus 1 j minus 1, I plus 1 j, and dp I j minus 1 plus a of j minus a of I. These are the transitions here. So if this is the transition for any value of I and j, I already need the value of I plus 1j and I j minus 1 pre-computed. First loop for the endpoint, second one for the start. That is correct. So what we are going to do is we are going to have the first loop in the backwards order, that is for I from n to 1, and the second loop in the forward order. And that is simply because for any value of I need the value of I plus 1 to be pre-calculated. And that will only happen when I iterate in the reverse order. And similarly, for any value of j, I need the value of j minus 1 calculated. And that will happen when I iterate in the forward order. So I hope this helps you in figuring out how to actually iterate. So yeah, this is the order of iteration. We will go for I from n to 1. Yeah, all right. Okay. So now let's look for j. So the first case is when j is less than equals to I. Actually, we don't really need to do this, but let's just do it. So if j is less than equals to I, then it doesn't make any sense. We can just do dpij to be 0. Now we are on to the interesting cases where j is strictly greater than I. And we can just simply write this line out here. dp of ij would be minimum of dp of I plus 1j and dp of ij minus 1 plus a of j minus a of I. And yeah, this should probably work. Finally, I will output dp of 1n. It seems to be fine. Let's just check. Okay, it is giving 3 here. This should be 0, obviously. Let's try this one. Okay, we are getting 11. That is correct. So it should be correct now. Yeah, seems correct. All right. So this was the second problem that we had to discuss today. This was a really interesting one because it introduced us to a new topic, a new kind of DP, which is called range DP, in which we apply DP on a particular range.
Could you tell like once again?
Yeah,
like,
so we are looping. The first loop is in the reverse order,
Yeah.
going from n to 1. And the second loop is in the forward order, that is going from 1 to n. All right.
So the first loop is
That's it. That's it for the second problem. I hope you guys got to learn something new. This is a really interesting one. Okay, so with the two problems done, let's now move to the last problem that we'll be discussing today. I already have sent the link in the chat box. Oh, is Ayush speaking something? I can't hear you.
Hello.
If you want to say something and I can't hear you, you can still write it down in the chat box. Okay, I think there is some issue on his end. I will just write it in the chat box. All right. Okay, so can you please explain what I and J are representing here? Right, so I is representing the starting point of my range and J is representing the ending point of my range. We are doing a DP on the range, and DP of ij is equal to the minimum discrepancy that we can get if we only consider the range from I to j. And finally, we have to output for the entire array, which is the range from 1 to n. So the answer is going to be DP of 1n. Oh, it looks like I can't hear you guys. All right, so I don't know what to do here. So we'll have to settle with clearing the doubts in the chat box itself. Okay, so yeah, I hope you are clear, Ayush, as to what I and j are representing here. I is the starting point of my range and j is the ending point of my range. Yeah, that is why I have just applied this condition. If j is less than equals to I, you can just start this j from I plus 1 and omit this condition at all. This will also be correct. Right? This is also correct. Okay. All right. Moving on to the last problem. This is again another 1800 and a very intuitive problem where we will make some observations. It's not just simple DP that you make a DP state and solve it. First, you have to make some observation and then you have to reduce it to a DP problem. So let's see what this problem has to say. So we are wandering in a space and so on and so forth. Okay, so there is a doubt which says, after watching your explanation, should I submit it directly? Well, I guess you can. Give it some time and you can try it again and see whether you are able to solve the problem again by yourself. And if you are, then that's good enough. Okay, so in this problem, we have a grid of size n cross m. And basically what happens is we can go from any cell to any adjacent cell. That is like a normal graph plus grid problem where you are allowed to go from a cell to any of its adjacent cell. These two lines are saying the same thing. And there is a cost for every edge. So we are going from any cell to any of its adjacent cell using an edge, and every edge has a particular cost. So if we use an edge to go from one cell to another, we have to pay a cost, right? So that is the thing here. And what we have to finally answer is for each starting vertex I, j, we have to tell what is the minimum possible cost if we walk from I, j and go back to it after exactly k steps, right? So the problem is saying that every edge has some cost and we have to start from a cell I, j and we have to come back to it and we have to do all of this in exactly k steps, and then we have to tell the minimum cost for that. And this we have to tell for all the starting cells from I to j, all the starting cells I comma j for I from 1 to n and j from 1 to m. And the value of k is fixed for all the cells. So the value k will be provided to us in the input. So we have n, m, and k in the input, and we then have the costs of all the edges. So there are two matrices, and that will give us the cost of all the edges. So here they are trying to say that first we are given with n, m, and k, and then we are given the edges of all the costs of all the horizontal edges. So that will be n cross m minus 1 horizontal edges. That is an edge between a vertex I comma j and the vertex I comma j plus 1. And after that, we are given the cost of vertical edges. Those are from the edges from the cells I comma j to the cells I plus 1 comma j. So that will be an I minus 1 into, that will be an n minus 1 into m matrix, which will give us the cost of all the vertical edges. Right, so all this information has been given to us. We have n, m, k, and the cost of all the edges. And finally, for all the starting points, we have to find out what is the minimum cost so that we start at that cell and also end up at that cell, but we use exactly k edges. Right, so is the problem clear to everyone? If it is not clear, you guys are free to ask. Okay, so if it is clear enough, I will give you a 2-3 minutes of time to think about it. Again, try to make some observations as to when the answer will actually exist, because we have to output -1 if we cannot go back. So try to first think about the case where we cannot even go back, and that is not very difficult to do. And once you are done with that, try to make some observations as to what the path is going to look like. If you have any ideas, as always, you are free to share. Any ideas about when an answer will actually exist? When is it possible to actually come back from I comma j to I comma j by using exactly k edges? I will give 1 or 2 more minutes to think. The first thing is very easy to figure out for what values of k an answer will exist. That is not a very difficult thing. Okay, any ideas when an answer is going to exist? For what values of k we can start from I comma j and come back to I comma j? That is really easy. Like, it is not very difficult to think. Yeah, great. So all of you are correct. If k is even, that is the only case where an answer is going to exist. If k is odd, then we can simply output -1, an n cross m matrix filled with -1. Great, so let's start with the solution. The first thing is to figure out when the answer will exist. We will be solving it using dynamic programming, and that is what we are going to do. There is no pre-computation per se. let's see. So let's denote by R, L, D, and U the number of right operations, left operations, down operations, and U operations, right? A right operation is just that you go from ij to ij plus 1. Left is that you go from ij to ij minus 1, so on and so forth. So let's say the total number of right operations are R, left operations are L, and so on and so forth. Then what we know is that net displacement in the x direction, or I should say in the horizontal direction, should be 0 in the horizontal as well as vertical. And that just means that if I make R number of right operations, then I have to combat them with the same number of left operations, right? And that means R is equals to L. And if I make D number of down operations, then again, I have to combat them with D number of up operations. That is pretty intuitive. So D has to be equals to U. So total number of operations, that is total number of edges that I'm going to use, is R plus L plus D plus U, which is nothing but 2 times R plus D, because L is just equals to R and U is just equals to D. And this is always even. So one thing is for sure, when K is odd, then I can never come back to I comma J. And now if K is even, then obviously I can just come back to I comma J. That is always possible, right? And what I can do is I can just make K by 2 operations of going right, and then I can do K by 2 operations of going left whenever possible and just come back. Yeah, that is one thing that I can do here. Okay. Now, can anyone tell me how the path is going to look like? Any ideas? The value of K is always going to be even. I will start from I comma J and I will move somewhere and I will come back to I comma J. But can anyone tell me how the path is going to look like? Okay, let's see what happens. So let's say at I comma J, this is the point I comma J, and I go here. Then I go here. Then I go here. And like this, I come back to I comma J. So I'm using 6 operations. Yeah, so 6 is even, and I'm using 6 operations to come back to I comma J, starting from I comma J. Right. Now, let's say I am at this position. I will be at this position after 3 operations, right? And my path is looking like this. I'm going here, and then from here, I'm taking these 3 steps and coming back to I comma J. But one thing is, I want to have minimum possible cost, right? So let's say this is cell 1, where I'm starting, and this is cell 2, where I'm halfway through my path, right? I have done 3 operations and I'm halfway through. But one thing to note here is that if I'm going from the second cell to the first cell, that is, if I'm going from the halfway cell to I comma J back again, then that means that the total cost in going from 2 to 1 is less than the total cost in going from 1 to 2. And that means if I want to minimize my cost, I could have just went from 1 to 2 in this fashion and just came back, right? That is always beneficial for me. Similarly, if the cost from 1 to 2 using this route is smaller than the previous route, then I can just go from 1 to 2 using this route and come back. And that will always be beneficial. Let's say the cost of this route is X and the cost of this route is Y. And if X is less than Y, then there is no need for me to use Y at all. Then I can deal with 2X. And if Y is less than X, then there is no need for me to deal with X at all. I can go from 1 to 2 using Y and then come back using Y. So that means I will just take a path of K by 2 steps and reverse always. This is how my path is going to look like. I am going somewhere using K by 2 steps and then I'm coming back. I'm taking the exact same path. to come back. So is everybody clear about why I am taking the same path? Because if the cost of going to the first k/2, if the cost of taking the first k/2 edges is x, and I have a smaller route from going to the second cell to the first cell, then it's better to use that route in the beginning as well. So I can either do 2x or 2y depending on whether x is smaller than y. That means this path of x has to be equal to y, and I will always start at a particular position, move k/2 steps, and just come back. I hope you guys are clear about why that is happening. And if that is the case, then another observation is that if my first step is r, that is I am going from I, j to I, j plus 1, then my last step is going to be from I, j plus 1 to I. So I will come back. So let's write it down like this. If I move from ij to ij plus 1, then I will come back from ij plus 1 to ij. And that is just because I am just taking a path for the first k/2 steps and just reversing the path. So the first cell that I'm going to is the last cell that I'm coming from. That is pretty obvious to understand. And that means the path is going to look like this. I'm just assuming that I go from ij to ij plus 1. We can go to any of the 4 possibilities, but for the sake of explaining, I'm assuming that I'm going right. So the path is going to look like this: I, j to I, j plus 1 to something, and then reverse that something, and then again to I, j plus 1, and then to I, j again. And all of this has to be done in a total of k operations, right? So if I'm taking a total of k operations, then one operation is being taken in going from ij to ij plus 1. Then some number of operations are being taken here. And then again, another operation is being taken in going from ij plus 1 to ij. So this is just going to be k minus 2, because in total I have k operations. So this has to be equal to k minus 2. Right. So all that is done. Now let's see how to actually solve this problem using dynamic programming. Again, if you look at the constraints, you'll realize that the values of n, m, and k are small enough. So that already hints us towards a DP solution. So yeah, the first step is done. We have convinced ourselves that this is going to be DP because n, m, and k are all small. So can anyone tell me now what the state of the DP should be? Any guesses? Again, you can easily figure out the state if you even look at the constraints. The values of n and m are up to 500 and k is also up to 20. So it won't harm us if we include all of these values in our state. All right. So let's now start with the DP. So what we'll do is we'll have a 3D DP, DP ijk. That denotes the minimum cost of starting from ij and coming back to it after exactly k steps, right? So if this is the state of my DP, can anyone tell me what the final answer is going to be? Of course, we have to output the value for all the i's and j's, and the problem has simply asked us this, which is the state of our DP. So the final answer for all ij, DP of I, j, and capital K, where capital K is given to us in the problem, and it is an even number for sure. Okay, so this is going to be the state of my DP, and I know that from I comma j, I am going somewhere that can be I comma j plus 1, I plus 1 comma j, and so on and so forth. We have 4 choices. So let's say we go from ij to ij plus 1. So can anyone tell me the transition in going from ij to ij plus 1? Again, you can look here for reference. From ij, you are going to ij plus 1, and then you are doing something there. And then you are going from ij plus 1 back to I comma j. And so the transitions are going to look something like this. So dp ijk is equal to, first of all, you take this edge in going from ij to ij plus 1. So that will be the cost in going from ij to ij plus 1, which is given to you in the input. That is nothing to worry about. And then finally, that is something in between. And then you are coming back from ij plus 1 to ij, right? So again, that will just be this cost. So I can just say that this cost is multiplied 2 times. Once in going from ij to I plus 1 to ij plus 1, and once in coming back. And now you have utilized 2 edges, and you had to utilize k edges. So you are left with k minus 2 edges, and you are starting from ij plus 1, and you are coming back to ij plus 1. And that is what our dp is representing. So I can say that is dp of I j plus 1 using k minus 2 edges. So yeah, this is it. These are all the transitions. This is just one case in which we decide to go right. We can decide to go down, left, or above. That is our choice. But the transitions are going to be fairly similar. Right. So this is the entire solution to this problem. If you guys have any doubts, you can write them down in the chat box, because apparently my speaker isn't working. All right, if there are no doubts, then that's good. Then that's great. And I should go ahead and try to implement this. Explorer space. All right, let's try to implement this one. Okay. So instead of ij, I have to keep a capital K variable. In the input, first I'm getting the values of n, m, and k. And then I'm getting 2 costs. One is the cost of all the horizontal edges, and the other is the cost of all the vertical edges. So I will name them as cost 1 and cost 2. If a 4-length path like ABA, BA is allowed. Yeah, that is allowed. That is allowed for sure. The only requirement here is that I'm going from A to B, and in return, I'm again coming back from B to A. In the problem, again, they have mentioned here that before going back to your starting vertex, after k steps, you are allowed to visit that step. You are allowed to visit your starting vertex or not. That is your choice. So a path like this is surely allowed. From A, B, A, B, A, that is allowed. Okay. So let's just take the input for all the horizontal edges. If you guys can hear this background music, I would request you to please excuse this. So I have taken the horizontal edges. Now let's take in the vertical edges. Okay. All right. So the first case is that the answer is not existing, and that will happen when k is odd. So if k is odd, I can simply output -1. for all the values. Also, there are no test cases. All right, so now I will assume that k is even. So now we will create a DP array, surely. This is a 3D DP, so I will prefer not to use vectors here. I will just create a normal array. The dimensions are going to be n cross m cross k. Just for being safe, I just add 5. That is one of my habits. Okay, so the base case here is that if I don't do any operations, that if the value of k is 0, then obviously the cost is also 0. So I have to initialize everything with 0. So dp of ij0 is equals to 0. Again here, let me write what dp of ijk is representing. Cost to start from ij and come back after using k edges. So if we are using no edges, that is k is equals to 0, then obviously the answer is going to be 0. So I have initialized them. Now let's talk about the actual transitions. Okay, so what is happening is that my k is going from 2 to capital K. Why? Because obviously if I'm making k operations, then I have to depend on the value of k minus 2. So that is why k will go from 2 to capital K. So let's iterate on that. K is equals to 2, k is capital K. Right, so now my k is fixed. Now I have to iterate on I and j. That is simple enough. We don't need a specific order because my dp ijk only depends on the k minus 2 dp values. So that is enough for me. Now, let's say that the value of dp ijk is infinity. We will initialize it with infinity. And now I will try to go somewhere. I have 4 choices. And the first choice that I make is to go right. And I can go right if and only if my j is less than n. So let's say first we try to go left. I can go left only if my current column is greater than 1. So if j is greater than 1, then I can go left. And then my val will become minimum of val comma something. And that something is that I will use the edge that is costing me twice. And that will just be cost 1 of ij minus 1. So this is the cost of the edge and I'm using it twice. So that is why twice of cost of j minus 1. And then I'm going from I comma j to I comma j minus 1. So that would be dp of I j minus 1. And since I have already utilized 2 edges here, I will be left with k minus 2 edges here. So yeah, this is the first case. And the second case is that I decide to go right. And for that to be possible, my j has to be less than m. And similarly, I can do something like this. Val is equals to minimum of itself. And twice of, here it will be cost 1 of ij, because I'm going from ij to ij plus 1. And the cost of that is cost 1 of ij. And then I'm going from ij to ij plus 1. So it will be of dp of ij plus 1, k minus 2. Similarly, I can decide to go down. And that can only be possible when I is less than n. So in that case, val will be minimum of val. And now I am using a vertical edge and the vertical edges are stored in the cost 2 array. So if I'm going down, the cost will be cost of ij. And I'm going down to I plus 1j. So it will be dp of I plus 1j k minus 2. And the last thing that I can do is I can decide to go up. And for that to happen, I should be greater than 1. And then I can do val is equals to minimum of itself. And 2 into cost of I minus 1j, cost 2 of I minus 1j. Again, here it should be cost 2. And from ij, I'm going to I minus 1j. So it will be dp of I minus 1j, k minus 2. And once I'm done, I can just say that dp of ijk is equals to val. All right, now I've completed all the dp values. All that's left for me to do is to do this. I can just output dpijk and get done. So this should probably work, although I'm not sure this will work on the first compile, but let's see. Okay, all right, it is working. That's surprising. Four, 4, 10, 6 seems fine. Again, if k is odd, then obviously it will give -1s. Oh yeah, you're right. So yeah, one thing we can do is instead of iterating k by 1, we can just iterate it by 2, because for all the odd values, the answer will be just useless, because for all the values, the answer has to be 0. That's true. So I have to increment k by 2. But even if you do it by 1, that shouldn't be a cause of worry. The answer should still be correct. Right, so I will just check it again. Yeah, seems fine. All right, so this is done. So these are all the problems that I had in mind today. So I hope you guys enjoyed the session and got to learn something new today. And I will be stopping the recording now.